This video is brought to you by Patreon. Patreon! Hoopsie daisy! What exactly should television for preschoolers be? What qualities should we strive for when toddlers are left glued to the television screen? If you ask PBS and the Children's Television Workshop, preschool television should be an opportunity to give kids a head start in education, with Sesame Street teaching letters and numbers and Mr. Rogers teaching emotional intelligence. If you were to ask the early days of network television, preschool television meant silly puppets and goofy games to keep kids distracted while the stay-at-home moms can get the work done. And if you were to ask Nickelodeon, well, the answer would change dramatically over the years, with shifting ratios of education and entertainment. But in the early days of Nick Jr., the focus seemed to be in presenting a collection of small, cozy, magical worlds that young children could get lost in. Animated worlds of magic, friendship, and song. And a lot of the time, these worlds came from Japan. Yep, it's that time again. Time for anime on Nick Jr. While 1991 saw several dramatic turns for Nickelodeon as a whole, the channel's preschool programming block mostly took it easy this year, with only one change. After a solid 9-year run on the channel, Nick Jr. dropped Canadian mainstay Today's Special on April 30th, and on the very next day, May 1st, introduced another Saban dubbed and imported anime adventure to join the ranks of shows like Adventures of the Little Koala, Noozles, and Maya the Bee. This is the story of the Littl Bits.
They come from Foothill Forest, among the big green trees. The Littl Bits are silly, but they're really out to please. Discovering together with a yippee and a yay. Nick Jr.'s where they learn and grow each and every day. With a little bit of laughing and a little bit of pout. The Littl Bits don't worry, cause they're sure to work things out. They're loyal friends to nature, so give the bits a shot. And watch them on Nick Jr., you'll love Littl Bits a lot.
The Littl Bits, weekdays at 2/1 Central on Nick Jr.
Deep in the foothill forest lives a community of tiny, sprite-like people, the Littl Bits. With a good work ethic and a strong sense of community, the Littl Bits live in harmony with nature around them, making friends with the animals, developing sustainable harvests, and protecting the land the best they can. Our focus is that of the children of the village, following their day-to-day adventures as they learn about the world around them and grow into their roles as part of the forest and part of society. There's Lilibit, a sweet orphan girl living with her uncle, the town Dr. Snoozabit. Lilibit is warm and kind, and has a talent with communicating with the woodland creatures around her, making fast friends with a flying squirrel named Snuffly.
You okay? We're going to the spring festival. Can you come with us? Yeah. Good. Race you! This is gonna be the best festival we've ever had!
Also, a blue hedgehog, who fights off threats by curling into a ball and spinning at them. 1991 was a good year for this very specific character type. Lilibit's best friend is Willybit, an adventurous young man, the first to charge into adventure despite the frequent warnings from the adults. Sure, he and his friends can sneak away from the mountain lion threatening that nice beaver family and go get help from the adults, but Willybit would much rather take on the big cat himself.
Well, we've waited long enough. Are you bits ready to get started?
And rounding out the team is Snagglebit, the son of the mayor. Being of the most powerful family among Littl Bits, Snagglebit can be a bit spoiled and full of himself from time to time, and occasionally becomes an outright bully when he doesn't get his way. But his desire for companionship with Lilibit and Willibit allow him to course correct and grow into being a better person.
Or are you just a loudmouth chicken? Loudmouth chicken, huh?
Oh, don't!
We'll take you on, Ivan. We're not afraid of you. You asked for it. Charge! Come on!
Along for the ride are Snagglebit's other friends, Chip and Brownybit, and Willybit's little sister, Teenybit. Our tiny friends play and go on little adventures, often learning a lesson or two along the way. Some bully kids are harassing a baby raccoon, So our gang challenges them to an ice hockey match to get the bullies to leave the poor animal alone. A rough game of stick and hoop out in the meadows results in a mother squirrel getting seriously hurt, and Willybit and Snagglebit have to quest into the mountains for some ice to help with the squirrel's fever. Legends of a rainbow firefly sees the kids traversing a nearby cave system in search of it. And oh, what a pretty sight it is.
The rainbow firefly!
Running for 26 episodes, the Littl Bits, or Mori no Yoki na ko hitotachi berufi to rirubito, which you might translate to Belfie and Littlebit, the cheerful forest dwarves, was originally produced by Tatsunoko Production, airing on Tokyo Channel 12 between January 7th and July 7th, 1980. And the animation is mostly pretty good. Primary colors are used as little as possible, opting instead for softer, more neutral tones. What's more, according to producer Masanori Nakano, wax crayons were used in many of the backgrounds, giving the show a very illustrated children's book look. With an above-average 7,000 cells used per episode, the animation is pretty fluid, with little to no animation shortcuts taken. Character designs are simple, the children given wide, expressive eyes to symbolize their youthful innocence, and the animals of the forest lean towards realism over anthropomorphization. It's beautiful in its simplicity. The one quirk of the show's animation that I find questionable, however, is framing. A lot of the time, characters are packed into the screen, half cut off by the frame. Sometimes it feels like I'm watching a poorly done 4x3 pan and scan copy of a letterbox film, but that's not the case at all. This is just how they made it to begin with. It's not a huge deal, but once I started noticing it, I couldn't stop noticing it, and sorry, now you'll be noticing it too. The Littl Bits' original run in Japan was pretty unassuming. It wasn't an adaptation of a pre-existing manga, it didn't have any follow-ups, it just kinda came and went, and Tatsunoko Production moved on. Founded in 1962 by manga artist Tatsu Yoshida, initially as a manga company, Tatsunoko branched out into animated television in 1965, following the breakout success of Mushi Productions' Astro Boy. While not the biggest anime producers on the field, Tatsunoko Productions seem to have a knack over their competitors in getting their shows imported to the United States in those decades before the American anime market really took off. In the 60s, they gave us Mach Go Go Go, which Translux dubbed into Speed Racer, which along with Astro Boy and Gigantor, made our parents fans of Japanese anime without them even knowing it. In the 70s, Tatsunoko kicked off the Gatchaman franchise, which was dubbed into Battle of the Planets by Sandy Frank to capitalize on the success of Star Wars. Then in the 80s, 3 of Tatsunoko's mecha anime, Super Dimension Fortress Macross, Super Dimension Cavalry Southern Cross, and Genesis Climber Mospeada, were edited together by Harmony Gold to become one long space epic called Robotech. Oh, and they also did a little Christian-themed anime in 1981 that was picked up by the Christian Broadcasting Network. Longtime viewers of this channel are probably familiar with it by name.
Superbook. Oh, Superbook.
Translux in the 60s, Sandy Frank in the 70s, Harmony Gold in the 80s, Tatsunoko was now looking for the small-time, questionable quality dubbing and distribution company that would take them into the 1990s. And Saban Entertainment definitely fit the bill. We've touched on the Saban story a number of times already, starting as a soundtrack company doing music for Deke productions like The Mysterious Cities of Gold and Inspector Gadget, then branching out into television production and distribution, creating English dubs for shows like Mapletown, Noozles, and Maya the Bee. Saban made some big pivots going into the 1990s. In 1988, they changed their name from Saban Productions to Saban Entertainment, dropping the evil Death Orb logo for a much more pleasing golden disc. The company kicked off 1990 with Video Power, a video game review show that pivoted into a game show in its second season. and they entered the VHS market with Saban Video. All the while, Haim Saban was shopping around the idea of adapting a Japanese Super Sentai show for an American audience, but I'm sure nothing will come of that. In the meantime, it was business as usual in the anime dubbing and distribution department. Now 11 years old, the Littl Bits had some subtle appeal for Nick Jr. First, it was following a bit of a trend, being the third animated show about tiny people living in the forest, coexisting with nature and having adventures, following in the footsteps of Maya the Bee, which Nick Jr. paired with the Littl Bits as a bit of a double feature, and especially the adventures of David the Gnome. However, while David the Gnome is an outright fantasy with magic, wizards, and elves, the Littl Bits has a more subdued supernatural element. Nobody's casting spells here. Despite appearances, this guy is not a wizard. There is a witch, sort of, but she's more of a grouchy old woman who lives by herself that kids make friends with. No curses or magic potions here. There is, however, an underlying mythology that the characters themselves don't fully understand. The Littl Bits village is built around an ancient stone temple of unknown origins, with legends that it contains wondrous artifacts like a magic feather that makes you brave, though we never see such things. There's a woman in the mountains that may or may not be some kind of spirit, and then there's times when the lake becomes tainted, and whoever drinks from it slips into a supernatural coma and can only be revived by a special kind of winter strawberry. There is magic in this world, but it's a hidden magic none of our characters really understand, buried under several layers of myth. More often than not, an episode of the Littl Bits doesn't have anything to do with magic. For every slightly supernatural adventure, we have a half-dozen episodes where Lillibit, Willibit, and Snagglebit are just trying to help their little animal friends, like helping a young colt learn how to be brave. Another reason to dub the Littl Bits into English and bring it to the States was the decade-spanning success of the Smurfs. Based on the Belgium comic book first published in 1958, the Hanna-Barbera Smurfs cartoon aired on NBC from 1981 to 1989, for a whopping 256 episodes over 9 seasons. The show was incredibly successful, with a huge tie-in merchandising franchise and spawning several imitators like the Snorks. The Smurfs was also about a community of little people living out in the forest, having adventures. And both shows even had a main girl character with a strange, mysterious origin. Smurfette being created by the series villain Gargamel to infiltrate the Smurfs community, and Lillibit being the abandoned child of two supposedly cursed Wanderbits who bring bad luck wherever they go. Of course, the Littl Bits predate the 80s Smurf cartoon by a year, and the original Smurfs comic book adventures wouldn't reach Japan until 2011. But there's no doubt in my mind that Saban saw the coincidental similarities between the two shows and figured it would be profitable to have a Smurfs-like program in their library, even if the shows aren't really that similar. For example, there's no central antagonist in the Littl Bits, no reoccurring villains like Gargamel on the Smurfs. The drama of any given episode either comes from the challenges of the natural world or the drama and misunderstanding from the citizens of the village. When Helpabit's artisanal honey turns out bad, he's so ashamed he feels compelled to leave, and it's only from the encouragement of the children that he realizes how valued he is in the community.
Wait, help a bit! Help a bit! Help a bit! You're still here!
There's There's also no human element in the show at all. There's no human city in the distance. Humans don't come into the forest and cause damage from hunting or improper camping. The Little Bits don't make friends with a little child. There's no pollution, no fences, no farms, not even cheeky ruins to imply that this is secretly a post-apocalyptic setting or anything like that. Human beings just have no presence in the Little Bits, probably because the Little Bits themselves are human enough for these stories. The foothill forest itself is meant to represent every forest all at once, perfectly represented by the mishmash of local fauna. You have North American skunks, European hedgehogs, South American monkeys, Japanese tanuki, and Indian peacocks all sharing the forest together. And that's perfectly fine. You just probably shouldn't be taking any nature science lessons from this show. In a lot of ways, The Little Bits is very stripped down, especially when we're comparing it to David the Gnome or the Smurfs. But it is not without its own ideas, its own point of view. The show is very concerned with community, presenting an idealistic society that lives in harmony with itself and the nature around it. Everyone is given distinct roles with a craftsman and apprentice system of passing down knowledge. There's no money to speak of, and there's plenty of balance between work and relaxation, with regular seasonal festivals, including a frog rodeo. The show contrasts this with the Builder Bits, a society predating the Little Bits that Little Bit is descended from. The legend goes that the Builder Bits didn't respect nature, stripped the land of its resources and built massive cities, until nature fought back and destroyed everything. The show has some very clear ideas about local communities and living outside of capitalism. And that would be enough, but to put a hat on a hat, the Little Bit Society is also very staunchly democratic. The village has a mayor that is elected by the people, and there's a whole episode about how much more invested people should be in local politics.
Abstention is part of the voting process.
Watching?
Abstention means opting not to vote.
Gee, that's almost like voting against you, isn't it, Mayor?
Well, some might say that.
The Little Bits live in a society that has all the positive qualities of living off the land and helping your neighbors with few of the negatives, while still governed in a very modern system. In short, The Little Bits is pure cottagecore. It's Stardew Valley. It's cozy and idealistic and pastel and absolute fantasy. Until the apocalypse comes, that is. If you watch The Little Bits in order, you watch a full year in the lives of these characters, watching the seasons change from fall to winter to spring to summer. And as the year progresses, things get gradually weirder and more dangerous. The lake becomes tainted. The honey doesn't taste right. And then there's an earthquake. At first, everyone's like, okay, well, that was scary, but sometimes earthquakes just happen. But then the earthquakes start to happen more frequently. Storms bring rainbows that are pure blood red. Meanwhile, Willibit's father has been busy carving out a cave in the mountainside, and he won't explain why. Everything comes to a head in the show's final episode, Awful, Awful Days, where we learn that Willibit's grandfather somehow knew a great cataclysm would strike the village, something on a scale of what happened to the Build-A-Bits, and he entrusted his son, Willibit's father, to build a shelter for safety. Animals start rushing out of the forest, the sky turns red, and the final earthquake strikes. As everyone takes shelter in the cave, the Little Bits village is destroyed. There is no explanation for this, no god to put its signature on this Armageddon. Maybe the event was supernatural. Maybe it was a freak act of nature. But everyone's alive, and it's the children who decide what to do next. Rebuild, and make this community better than ever. Japan is particularly earthquake prone, and 2 years before the show's production, a 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck just offshore of the Miyagi Prefecture, resulting in widespread landslides that killed 28 people and caused extensive infrastructure damage, which led to major revisions in the country's building standards. So this kind of destructive imagery was pretty familiar to a Japanese audience, and the Little Bits pulling up their bootstraps and rebuilding can be seen as aspirational for said audience. It's hard to tell if this was an intended theme, but it's not hard to imagine some Japanese kids watching this and putting those pieces together for themselves. Very little behind-the-scenes information for the Littl Bits exists, except for one brief interview with producer Masanori Nakano from the February 1980 edition of Animage magazine. I myself have always wanted to do something fairy tale-like, so I am full of enthusiasm. I am very excited about the 80s. I want to create a beautiful show that is full of dreams that can only be expressed through animation. It's my dream to have many children see it, and I hope that comes true. Saban Entertainment appears to have kept these ideas mostly intact with their localization, the only egregious addition being these title cards with dead-eye versions of Lillibit and Willibit. No way they looked at this and thought, yes, this is artistically consistent with the rest of the series. As always, Haim Saban and Shuki Levy are credited for the English version soundtrack, and it's pretty good. The theme song is impossibly upbeat and catchy, inviting you to join in the fun. And join in I did. While there is an element of subjective review in all of these videos, I have tried my best to keep my personal nostalgic feelings in check. We are now very much into my era of Nickelodeon, and specifically, my era of Nick Jr. I was 4 years old in 1991. I wouldn't start kindergarten for another year. So while my parents worked, I was left with my grandparents and could watch Nickelodeon all day long. What was great about Nickelodeon is that, while there would eventually be shows you felt too old to watch, there were very few shows you felt too young to watch. At 4 years old, you can sit through all of Nick Jr., enjoying the music of Sharon, Lois, and Bram's Elephant Show and the goofy adventures over at Eureka's Castle, and then gladly catch some Inspector Gadget and Hey Dude on afternoon Nickelodeon, and you'd be enjoying yourself just as much. In 1991, the totality of Nickelodeon was my oyster, or at least until my parents picked me up. So I'm very nostalgic for this era of the channel, and I'm especially nostalgic for the Littl Bits. Some of my formative memories include sitting in front of the TV, watching the entire village of tiny people put out a forest fire while I nibbled on frosted animal crackers in a little yellow plastic bowl. I sang the theme song at the dinner table. I played make-believe Little Bit adventures out in the backyard by laying face down in the grass and imagining Lillibit and Willibit interacting with the little bugs in the dirt. I just found the whole thing very enchanting. While there were better shows on Nickelodeon, while there were shows better remembered, while there were shows with a far larger impact on pop culture, the Littl Bits is the show I personally am the most nostalgic for. Reapproaching it as an adult, I was surprised at how simple it was, stripping out a lot of the flashiness and conflict of its children's television contemporaries, and just telling quaint stories in a quaint storybook world. There are themes to be sure, but there weren't many morals beyond being kind, doing your best, and respecting nature. The Littl Bits aired on Nickelodeon for 4 years, pretty much to the day, airing its last on the channel on April 30th, 1995. Saban released a few episodes on VHS, packaged with little coloring books, and in 2007, 3 DVDs with 2 episodes each were released in the United Kingdom. There have been a number of full-series DVD releases in other countries, which is where this higher quality footage comes from, but preservation of Saban's English dub has mostly fallen to the hands of tape traders. The Littl Bits does seem like the kind of semi-forgotten show that Discotek would scoop up at some point. After all, it wouldn't be the first time Discotek released the Saban-produced English dub of a Tatsunoko anime released in 1991.
Will somebody please cue that boy?
Samurai Pizza Cats.
Oh yeah!
With its comedic redub taking advantage of the popularity of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Saban naturally put more eggs in the Samurai Pizza Cats basket than the Littl Bits basket. While it's my personal Nickelodeon nostalgia crown jewel, the Littl Bits never tried to punch above its weight. Its energy more on the level of storybook time at the local library. Even with its most dramatic, harrowing moments, the Littl Bits always ended with a warm optimism. That all things broken can be mended. That we can all get back up after falling down. And I love it for that.
Nick, 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 Nickelodeon. Nick, 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 Nickelodeon.
Next time, Mike O'Malley joins the Nickelodeon family with the channel's new game show. Who's ready for a power surge? Sadly, there isn't a whole lot of documentation on the production of the Littl Bits. However, the one anime magazine scan I found comes to us from the good old Internet Archive. Even now, after losing their day in court and being forced to remove hundreds of thousands of books from their collection, which I fear will set legal precedent against physical libraries in the future, the Internet Archive remains one of the last true homes of knowledge and media preservation in a hostile, AI-riddled modern internet. Thank you all for watching. If you like to support Knacks and other Pop Arena projects, consider contributing to my Patreon. And if you're already contributing, heads up, due to systems beyond my control, we'll be switching from a per video to a per month payment model in November. More information on that coming soon. You can also support the channel by liking the video, subscribing, hitting that bell icon for notifications, leaving a comment, following me on social medias, sending a one-time donation through PayPal or Coffee, and sharing knickknacks with all your friends. I'll see you next time, and remember, Black Lives Matter.